Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this month's video for the Coverlet of Comfort, or the first of this month's video should I say. This month the theme is Honouring Slowstitch, so I'll talk more about it as I get into my desk and what I'm going to do, but I'm going to make a piece using a kind of fabric collage technique that's maybe has some little differences to how I normally do it, and I'm taking my inspiration from Japanese Boro. And so I'm using cloths in shades of blue. And if you don't know what Boro is, I'll talk more about that as well while I'm stitching. But before I get into that, I just wanted to show you my coverlet with last month and the month before's pieces attached, and just give you a little heads up about how I'm going to attach my November and December piece, because I've got a kind of specific plan, which isn't something I normally do, but because I've got my moon border pieces, I have thought ahead. It might change, but I just need to explain to you why I'm choosing the size that I am for the month of November. Your coverlet, of course, can be completely different. It will be completely different. Your dimensions will be different, and so on, because we've all been working, you know. We've all been doing us, haven't we? So we've all produced individual, unique pieces, which I think is lovely. But anyway, so November and December will be joined together and then joined to the coverlet. So you might have a different way of doing that. But anyway, I'll turn you around, show you my coverlet, and then I'll show you a little diagram that I've drawn of my coverlet, which is something I don't normally do, but I just thought it was the easiest way of explaining it. Okay, so here is my coverlet hanging against the door curtain. I've put the big light on because it's a little bit gloomy today. I hope you can see it. I'll try and brighten it up post-production. So as you can see, I've joined at the top, my October piece top left, and then my September piece is top right. And I really love the way the blue of the log cabins is now feeding into the blue of the September piece. So for my November and December, I'm going to join those on the right hand side, so alongside my flora and fauna blocks. And they're going to end up being the whole length of that side. So I'm going to make my November piece to go on the top of the right hand side and then leave space for my December piece at the bottom. But I'm also going to begin to incorporate my border pieces that I made with my moon squares. Now I'm going to go and sit at my desk and show you a diagram, like I said, because it's easier I think than explaining it, but I just wanted you to keep the idea of the image of my coverlet in your head so that you're clear when you look at my drawing, because I haven't drawn the coverlet, I've just drawn a big rectangle. So I'll go and sit at my desk now and show you my drawing. Okay, so here is my coverlet as you just saw it hanging on the door, so that's this centerpiece here. And I'm going to make my November piece a long strip to go top right, and my December piece will eventually be a square. And then these little squares with the circles in are my moon squares. I had one here to show you. What have I done with it, in case you haven't seen them? I have to go and get it. I made a series of videos a little while ago where I soaked a little piece of cloth in my morning tea bag every day and did a little bit of rust printing with a rusty washer, and then each evening I stitched the phase of the moon onto it. That's back in the Journal for All Seasons playlist, that project. And then I decided I didn't want them in my journal, so I made these 9 patches, and there's another video showing how I made these 9 patches. Maybe I'll put that as the video at the end of this one to watch next. So I made these 9 patches, so obviously there were 28 of them, because there's 28 days in a moon cycle-ish. And they're 6 inches square. Each of the individual squares is 2 inches, and so 7 of them joined together makes 42 inches long. Now my coverlet is 48 inches long. So what I'm thinking of doing at this moment is I'm going to make my November square 36 inches. The measurements are irrelevant, like I said, because unless your coverlet happens to be 48 inches long and you want to do this, it's meaningless. But I'm just explaining my thought process. So I want to get something to point with. So this will be my November piece, which will be 36 inches long by 6 inches wide-ish. I don't mind if it's, you know, off on the length really. And then I'm going to stitch one of these strips that I've joined into 9 patches to the side but it's going to stick up here. It'll be longer, so it'll be this unit. Don't worry about how. I'll obviously share how when I come to do it, but you know, if you want to we're cobbling these cloths together all over the place, so everything's possible. So that will be one strip there that I just outlined in dark. So then that width there will be something like 12 inches, and then my December piece will be a 12-inch square. Now if you don't want to do this, if you just want to do a strip that's, you know, so long for November and another strip for December, what I do for December will absolutely work in the context of a strip. It doesn't have to be a square. But I just fancied the idea of one of the pieces breaking into the outer border rather than just putting the moon squares just as a solid border all the way around. I just liked it just came to me and I decided to go with it. So that will be one of my strips of 7 moons, and then the other strip of 7 moons will come here, and then there'll be a gap with a question mark because I don't know yet what I'll put there, and then the third strip will be here, and then there'll be another corner piece needed, and then the fourth strip is along the top. So I hope that makes sense. So my November piece, mine is going to be 36 by 6 inches finished. I'm going to cut it quite a bit bigger because of the technique I'm going to use. And then December we'll see when we get there, and you know, everything may change. This is just my plan for the moment. I didn't in the beginning of the year plan the whole coverlet section by section, because that's not the way I work. I did think about doing it because I thought maybe for some of you you would want to know, but I thought, no, Catherine, we're going to be authentic. We're going to work in the way that we work, that I work. I don't know why I'm saying we, there's only one of me. Sometimes I could do with there being more than one of me, but anyway, I'm sure you know the feeling. Yeah, I wanted to work in the way that I work and share that process with you, because this is slow stitch and the process is the most important thing. So whilst I don't often do a plan, and I wouldn't have done a plan, I've only done this to show you, because I had the idea, I thought it was just easier to draw it to show you rather than try and explain it with my words, which sometimes fail me. So I hope that's all clear. This is my current plan, but don't hold me to it because it may change. But this is why I'm doing quite a long strip for November and leaving only a little bit for December. So if I wasn't doing the moon border thing, my strip would have to, my November and December strip would have to end up being 48 inches long. So probably what I would have done then was make it slightly wider and then split it, maybe not exactly in half because I find that a bit static, but make the November piece, slightly longer, maybe 2/3 to 1/3 or something like that. So you can absolutely do that if you want to. So I hope that's clear. If you don't want to mess about like I'm doing, just make your November piece a bit wider, maybe 8 inches wide or so, and make it about 2/3 the length of the side of your coverlet, and then your December piece will be a bit smaller. But that's fine, you know, December, I do know what we're doing. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do it in December, but also December for many of us I know is quite a busy month if we celebrate the holiday season. And I've got family coming and, you know, my children coming and so on. So I don't think it will be any bad thing for some of us if the December piece is a little bit less work. And then going into January, then I'm going to come back. Don't worry, I'm not going to say, right, that's it, we're done. Throughout the beginning of January, and we'll see how long it takes, I'm going to, well, I'll show you how I'm going to attach all my border pieces. I'll show you how to put a backing on if you want to. I'll show you how to finish the edges, and I'll also talk about, and I might do that first actually, I'll talk about looking at your coverlet overall and deciding if you want to make any additions, any more stitching, any more patching, you know, things like that. So some people have been asking me already about finishing off the edges and so on. I'm not going to get into that now because we're still in the process, so apologies if you, I know some people are thinking they can finish off this edge because they're going to add here. Don't do that. That's not the, that's, you know, just you wait, stay with the process. We're going to finish the main body of the coverlet before we start thinking about edging. That's just my process, and like I said, that's what I'm sharing with you, is the way I do things. So yeah, I'm not going to show you any finishing techniques. I'm afraid you'll just have to wait. Okay, right, so I hope that's all clear. Feel free to ask questions as always. I'm now going to get my work out, my piece I'm actually going to make, and talk you through what I'm going to do. Okay, so I hope that was all clear in terms of how I'm going to make this month's piece fit on my coverlet. Before I start, no, I haven't gone ahead and finished it. Before I start, I just wanted to show you my inspiration for my piece this month. It's going to be a little bit different in that it's not going to be, you know, like it's been in previous months where I've done one stage each week, because I think I'm going to just keep it really, really simple, because the theme is slow stitch and my inspiration is coming from Japanese Boro. So rather than, you know, make a start this week and then each week show you a different technique, I'm basically going to work in this style, which is my absolute favourite way of working. So obviously if this speaks to you, you go ahead and do this, but if you have some other thing about slow stitch that is dear to you, or that you've learned over the, you know, over the course of making the coverlet, or that if you did the stitch journal with me last year, you know, you feel free to do something completely different. This is a little bit permission to play, but like I said in my introduction, the theme for this month is slow stitch, because in terms of the coverlet of comfort, giving me comfort through my creativity, it is that very concept of slow stitch that is literally at the heart of it all. So this actually is the wrap from my Forager's journal, which I made for an exhibition, was it 2 years ago now? Gosh, time flies. So this main section of it here in the middle is what I'm looking at. So I'm not going to obviously recreate it exactly, but I want it to have this kind of feel. So that's that. It's just all little scraps and running stitch done in both directions, and here and there a little bit of some other stitching as we go along. So there will still be a weekly video this month, but it will be more along the lines of me sitting here with you each week stitching and giving you my thoughts on slow stitch, maybe going into a little bit more depth than I have done in previous videos, or maybe repeating myself, who knows. We'll see. The other thing I just want to show you briefly is this book which I have. Oh, that's the back of it. I mean, look, what a backstory. That's the back. This was actually a drop cloth from a old sheet that I was using on my table whilst I was eco-printing and so on. So it's stained, and you know, then I laundered it and I used it as the foundation. I mean, I love the back almost as much as the front. Anyway, that's that. So yeah, this book here, I've just borrowed this from a friend of mine. Borrowed, sorry. That's not that funny, Catherine, calm down. This is actually the catalogue of a Boro exhibition that was at Somerset House in London. I think it was actually some years ago. I hope it doesn't shine at you. That's my friend that I borrowed it from. In 2014, yeah. April 2014, the exhibition Boro Threads of Life. I mean, I'm not going to take you through it page by page because of copyright and all that, but I can show you a couple of... I can just open it at random actually. So this is actual, authentic Japanese Boro. This is not, you know, modern reproductions. I always talk about being inspired by Boro, because you can't actually make Boro. You can't start today and, you know, by the end of the day you've created a piece of Boro. That's not what Boro is, and I'll talk more about that as we go along. But I'll just show you a few of the beautiful pictures in here. I just absolutely find it breathtaking, and because the stories in the cloth, you know, the history within these cloths as well. I mean, look at that. So one more and then we'll stop. Look at that one. So it's very much indigo. Indigo colour is the colour that's associated with it. Apparently we're going to look at some more. Oh, look at that. I mean, that's just mouth-watering to me, if you like that kind of thing. So yeah, it's predominantly indigo, but in among you will see little glimpses of kind of tan colours, and here and there sometimes, I probably won't be able to just find something now, but here and there you sometimes just see, there's quite a lot of tan, you see a little pop of red. So that's why in this piece I've included, you know, because I'm inspired by, so it's predominantly blue, but not that, I had to add that to make it bigger. It's predominantly blue, but I've added little different shades of red. I mean, that's actually pink, that's off an old chair, and so on. So what I'm going to do now, because I've already been wittering on for quite a long time, is just start my piece with you now. So I've got my foundation piece here, and like I said when I showed you my coverlet, I'm aiming for it to finish at around 36 inches long by 6 inches wide. So I've actually got this 3 inches bigger in both directions, my backing piece, because when you do this much amount of stitching, it does pull it in quite a lot. So I would say, you know, make it a good 3 inches bigger than you want it to end up. And so I've got this, and I'm just going to do the classic cloth collage that I've done with you many times before onto this bit of old sheet. So I've got here in my basket a little, well, I've got this whole roll of, this is just some old sheet that I dyed with indigo a few years ago, and I do need to get my vat going, but I've got that, so that's quite a long roll. I might need to do something about the bottom of that clock. It's quite loud in here. I think it's because it's a bit more echoey here in the kitchen, because there's less soft furnishings. Anyway, and then I've got a few little scraps here, mostly blues, but some little bits of red. This little bit of red is a tiny scrap left that I've included in a couple of other parts in the coverlet, so I would like to include that. Some more little so even little bits like this. And then I've got a whole bigger stack here of, I'll just put the scraps back in the basket so they don't wander away, of blues. That's some eco print, that's indigo that I've dyed myself, but then there's some commercial blue cloth of different kinds. That was then tea dyed, so I've had commercial cloth that I've tea dyed to make it blend more nicely with the, I mean, if you don't have natural indigo dyed cloth and you've got blue but you find it too bright, or even like pieces like this that have got white in the print, if you tea dye them it will just age them a little bit if you want that authentic look. If you don't want to do indigo, just do a different colour. If you want to do multicolour, do multicolour. You don't have to do indigo blue, you know, you can do whatever you like. Like I said, it's thinking about what slow stitch means to you. That's a bit of vintage broderie anglais, or no, cut work. It's cut work dyed with indigo. Yeah, so you get the idea. So there's a bit of blue silk that I might include. All kinds of little scraps. This is a bit of vintage quilt. I think Vicky sent me that some time ago. And it's got some blue in it, but I might even use some of these other bits because they're nice and old and worn. More indigo. That was a 4-patch that I've taken apart again, so I'm repurposing. So yeah, and I've got quite a lot here. So I just went through and pulled out everything. It's probably too much to be working with. So that's the blues, but then I've also got a little pile here of, well, that's a tan, but it's got little specks of red. That was commercial tea dyed. That's a tan, but it's got blue in it. Not so sure about that actually, now I see it again. And then, you know, some more tans and some more sort of grungy looking colours, and then this piece of dark red. It was commercial cloth, but it was on the back of a cushion that was out on the terrace in France, and it's got faded by the sun, so I actually prefer here where it's faded to here where it is how it was originally. But maybe I'm weird, I don't know. Yeah, these bits have also been used elsewhere in the coverlet, but I've tea dyed them. And the pieces where I used them before, they weren't tea dyed, but now I have. So that's a bit of my old shirt. It's another bit that was blue and white, and now it's tea dyed and blue, and those two little bits. So I'll just add those. It's still a bit damp because I've only just done it this afternoon. How to tea dye, if you don't know, all I do is I save a couple of my old tea bags that I've had tea from, or if you use tea leaves you could save your tea leaves, and then I just make strong tea, you know, with some boiling water, and then dunk them in and leave them for maybe half an hour. Just leave them to soak in the hot tea, and then after half an hour I just take them out, I just rinse them under the cold tap, and let them dry, and they're tea dyed. That's all I do. I don't worry about neutralising or anything like that. If you wanted to launder them properly, I guess you could, but I don't bother. So all I've got is my foundation, some applique pins, and the other thing on this as well is it was kind of layered. So do you see how it's really bitty, really tiny scraps? So I did sort of one pass of bigger pieces, and then I went back over and added other layers. So it's quite important that you choose, if you want to go for this sort of look, that you choose quite thin cloth, because you might end up with, you know, 3 or 4 layers in a place. So let's just make a start. Let's start with, I don't know what, I've got too much here now, I'm overwhelmed by choice. I'm going to just take a little bit out of that pile and start there. I don't know if you can see my little pile. Let's start with this bit. And I like it when it's got these strange shapes, because it can, you know, it looks more like it's worn and torn, and it gives you much more interest in the texture. I'm going to leave a tiny border in the background of maybe 1/2 inch, because I had it 3 inches bigger, like I said. And I'm just going to put bits on, because you can nearly do nothing wrong, because you can go back and, you know, lay other pieces over the top if you're not happy with it. I love this bit as well. This was rust printed and then dipped in the indigo vat. So I think I'm going to have some of that. I'm going to put a piece of that down there, and this is so fine, this, I can just do that. It's so old and worn, I don't even need to snip it. I think I'm going to put that there, and then I'm going to put that over it. So I'm overlapping by about 1/4 to 1/2 inch, but I'm not worrying too much, because if there's little gaps, it really doesn't matter, because I can just put something else over the top. So I hope you enjoy the freedom of this month. I've been wanting to do this all along, really. I knew at one point there was going to be Boro, but then I had the idea of instead of making the theme Boro, making the theme Slowstitch, because I know our whole coverlet is Slowstitch. I'm just going to keep working while I'm talking. I know our whole coverlet is done in the Slowstitch style, but I really wanted to honour that. I really wanted to underline that by having a month that was dedicated to it. That makes sense. So then I thought, well, maybe if you're not into the blues and the grunge, you know, quite so much, then if we call the theme Slowstitch, I can talk more about it, because I know I do every now and then when I'm doing my scrolls or whatever. You know, talk about the principles of Slowstitch and so on, but you just have to fiddle about sometimes with what's going under and what's going over. That doesn't really want to go under anywhere. Maybe I'll just pull it up a bit like that. Again, like I said, I'm really not worried. Like, there's a little hole, but that's fine. That gives me a kind of reason to stick another little bit over the top in a while. Although I'm now looking at that and thinking that's a bit big, and I've buried my scissors under my, there they are, the snippies. That's a little bit too much of that check, so I'm going to tear a bit off. Yeah, so I thought that would give you more scope if you weren't into the idea of Boro. You could make a, you know, if you wanted to make a more precise collage in a different colourway, and do different fancy stitching on it, then as always, you know what I'm going to say. You do you. I want that a bit higher up, because I quite like that little gap there. I just quite like the idea of deliberately leaving little gaps. Well, I don't know whether I want that under or over. So although this ends up looking quite scrappy and random, no, I want that over, it does take some thought. And I don't think, I'm certainly not going to do this whole thing with you because it's going to take me some little while. But I just want to do enough with you to, you know, get you going if you're unsure. Because I do feel a little bit like I'm kind of saying, this month we're doing slow stitch, away you go. And I feel like that again because it's got that raggedy shape. Because we haven't, I don't think we've done true collage anywhere in the coverlet so far. We did a little bit, some of us, in the centre, in the January section. We did the 9 patch, and then there was a bit of, you know, so we haven't really done, and I know that is what many people think of when they think of slow stitch. They think of cloth collage, parallel lines of running stitch, and I'll talk as the weeks go on as to why I think there's much more to slow stitch than that. But that is kind of where, I mean, I was talking to someone the other day and who is not a slow stitcher, she's a quilter, and she said, oh, slow stitch, boring, cloth collage, lines of running stitch, it must just get so boring sitting doing that. Well, I'm sure all of you watching, or yeah, probably all of you watching, are not agreeing with that because you wouldn't be watching me. But also, and I did say, and she did, you know, listen to me, the person who said that, you know, and with interest as to what I said about it. She was happy to be, you know, to learn more about it. But it's if you look in Claire Wellesley Smith's book, Slow Stitch, which I've referred to before, I don't think you'll find any collage with parallel lines of running stitch. I'm just trying to think. I don't think you'll really find that in that whole book, which to me is the guide to slow stitch. Now this is a new cloth that was in one of those little packs. Actually, someone sent it to me or gave it to me, and I don't want it to be a perfect square like that, so I'm going to tear it, which has also distressed it, which makes me love it more. The other thing you can do with cloth, talking of Claire Wellesley Smith, because I know she does it, it's mentioned in her book, if you've got new cloth and you like this old grungy look, I hear that quite often from some of you, that, oh, I haven't got all those lovely old cloths, I've only got new cloth. Claire actually pegs it outside on the washing line and leaves it in the, you know, to weather cloth. So you could do that to it, tea dyeing like I said. I guess you could drive over it in your car, I'm half joking. Things like that, you know. No, I would say hang it outside. You could bury it in the ground for a day or two, don't leave it for too long. If you're, certainly not if you're in a humid climate. You can kind of, I mean, it's a little bit fake, I don't like to use the word fake, it's a little bit, I don't know what word to use. It's not the same as genuinely old cloth if you do that to it, but it will give it that look, that feel. See, in here I've got 2 or 3 tiny bits left of this preciousness, and this is Japanese kimono cotton from a piece that I had that a friend of mine gave me. Vintage Japanese kimono cotton. There's 3 little strips left, and I've used it as quite a large piece of it in my dad's quilt, and there's also some of it in this that I showed you earlier. I'm pretty sure, yeah, there's quite a big bit of it, and there is the other side of it, because it's black with blue print one side and blue with cream print or tan print on the other side, and there's a big piece of it. Yeah, so it was lovely to include that. I think this is, I keep thinking it's the last bit and then I find a tiny bit more, but they'll be finding their way in somehow, you know. I'll put them in. I quite like putting thin bits as well, because you can make changes in direction like this, which if you look at Authentic Boro, if you go onto Pinterest and look for authentic Japanese Boro, and you know, and really study the pictures, because books on Boro are quite rare, quite hard to find, and when you do find them they're often very expensive, the good ones. I'm not talking about, you know, people making Boro style stuff, you know, modern. I'm talking about actual authentic Boro. So yeah, so you can put lines like this and it just straight away makes it interesting. I won't do them now, I'll do that after I've got the bigger pieces on. Use some of this, the same as that, yeah. I don't mind using the same but not near each other. That makes sense. Now I want some more blue in there, I want some more real blue. Is this the same as well? Oh, that's slightly different. Let's have some of that. Oh, where's my where are my little squares that I took apart? I'll find those in a minute. I also try to avoid this. So you see that will make a line going all the way through. I much just prefer the look of it if everything's just staggered a little bit. So I hope you can see what I'm trying to convey is that I'm not working like I did if you watch me starting on the oak scroll, overlapping everything by ½ inch everywhere and just filling all the gaps. I'm thinking much more, it's almost, I think of it like a time lapse. So if you imagine you've got you've made a futon cover, say, out of some large pieces of indigo, precious indigo dye cloth that you've got, maybe from clothing that's worn out, or you know, pieces of cloth from sacks or whatever. You've pieced large pieces together to make a cover for your futon, and then you use that futon for several years and you patch it and you mend it as it wears, and at one point it becomes so worn that you can't, it's no use anymore as a futon cover. But cloth is precious, you can't just throw it away because you know you can't afford to do that. So you take pieces of it and you cut them and you reassemble them, and maybe you make it into a jacket, or maybe you make it into a cushion, or you know, something like that, or a cover for a table, or a cover for the floor. And then so the pieces get cut and reassembled, and that's how you end up with this fragmented appearance, little fragments put back together again. I'm just trying to get this apart, but of course I've sewn it together really well. And that gives you this layered, patched look. We're never going to achieve it, you know, we're never going to achieve the beauty that was in that book I showed you. It's just an approximation, I'm kind of inspired by. Yeah, that's going to take me a bit of time because I've also invisible basted it, but I am going to get those. I'm just wondering, actually, that's a bit thick. I'm just wondering if I just use that way up as it is, that will become too thick, because I like the seams. Yeah, I think it's, I would like, it's a bit too regular. I'm going to cut it. Try and tear it. Whoops. See, I like that there where that's been folded for I don't know how long. And it's got that crease mark in it, and it's had the sun on it, so it's faded there. And it just now looks more like I want it to look. So this cloth here is very thin, so I can afford to cover that with that thicker piece. I wouldn't want to put that double thick layer over some other cloth that's already thick. So I'm thinking a little bit about the logistics, because I'm going to have to stitch through that at one point, and I don't want the stitching process to not be pleasant. So this is a bit of old quilt. It was machine sewn. That cloth has torn on the cloth and not on the machine. Not on the stitching line. I'm going to take this piece and use it with its other two little bits still attached. I might work it in under there somewhere. So I hope if you haven't got old cloths like this that you're not despondent if you like this look. That you can come up with ways to, if you've got half-finished projects languishing in drawers that you know you're never going to finish,
just rip the bits of cloth out of them and use those in this. Like so, if you've got, you know, so this looks like it's been, well, it has been made into something else and now it's been repurposed because it's old and worn. You can kind of reproduce that. And you know, maybe by tea dyeing or sorry, I can hear a funny noise outside. Don't know what it is. Anyway, by tea dyeing, or you know, something, or hanging it outside in the weather for a few days or things like that. This little piece doesn't know where it wants to be, so I think I'm not going to work on a square section. The thing with that is when you then, so if I work to this line here and then basted all that and then did another, it would be in sections. So I'm going to put bits sticking out that way. It's a bit big. Oh, it's not outside, it's Stella snoring. Oh. I want a sort of long thin bit really. I'm making a mess now. I'm making a big mess. Let's have that bit, that's a bit of silk. So maybe we want that going that way. Something like that. And then something here maybe. Maybe baby. Some of this is a bit of old shirt. See, that's that nice shape that's come out of the placket or somewhere on the shirt. Too big, let's make it smaller. That way maybe. That way. Let's do that. So what I might do now is just pin all those on, and I know there's gaps and you know it's all jaggedy. I'll pin all those in place and then invisible base them down, and then I've committed to that. I'll get some pins in it first. I've committed to it, and then I can move on, you know, otherwise I'll be fiddling about with these bits forever. And I think at one point you just have to make a start, and like I said, it's a huge big piece, so it is going to take me a little while. So I'll go away and do that, and then I'll be back once I've got all that basted. Okay, so that section's all basted on. Now you might be asking yourself, I'm not sure if I was clear, why is she leaving gaps? Why isn't she doing what she normally does when she does cloth collage and, you know, filling it all in? I started to say that I look upon it like kind of time lapse, and then I talked about futon covers and repurposing and so on. I think it makes a difference to the finished look if you work on it in this way rather than doing it all at once, filling in all the gaps. So in my mind, what I've created here is some semblance of scraps of fragile cloth with holes and tears and worn patches, which are actually the places that I haven't collaged yet. I hope I'm making sense. If you find this too messy, you know, for your head to deal with, then do feel free to just collage in the conventional way, like we've done before. If you've made the cloth pouch with me way back, or any of the scrolls or anything like that, you know, that way of just building up with the overlaps everywhere. But I do encourage you to give this a go, because it's a different way of working, and it does give a different look. So you see, I was just putting the pieces on, I was making aesthetic decisions about what I liked where, but I wasn't stressing over having everything interlocking and fitting perfectly together. I was thinking more about how this piece of cloth interacts with the other pieces of cloth, and not so much that it had to cover the background. I hope that makes more sense than what I said before. So that now what I could do now, I could do one of two things. I could go on and cover the whole piece in this way, and if I was just going to do this just on my own that is probably what I would do. And that is how I will do the rest, but this little section here, I'm just going to, with you now, fill in the gaps or cover the gaps and put more layers onto it, just so that you get the idea, so that you've got, you know, enough information to go on in the week and do your own piece. So I've got in my basket here some of the smaller scraps. I've sort of pared them down a little bit, and I'm just going to go through and find something thin. That's nice and thin. And the basting, like I said, I haven't, do you see, I've basted through there. That's my basting line, so I've left a good 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch even of that edge, so I can turn it up and here, but everything is stitched down. I could wave it around and it wouldn't all fly off. Maybe you can see on the back, yeah, you see where I've gone on the back. I've just gone wherever I thought was necessary with my invisible basting, just to hold the pieces on. They're still flipping and flopping here and there. Some of you will love this, some of you won't. That's absolutely fine. You know, if you're really unsure about it and you don't want to commit to, well, you can do your background cloth and try and do it this way. And if you start and you don't like it, just go back to normal collage. You know, there's absolutely no pressure at all. But this is a way I love to work. I find it intuitive. I find it more organic. I always go back to that word when I can't think of an adjective, and I just love the look it gives. I mean, this is not Boro. I say that repeatedly whenever I talk about Boro. You have to be so careful because it is somebody else's culture, it's not mine, and I don't want to be disrespectful. You cannot make Boro. Boro evolves over time. Boro literally means rags. I don't know if I've said that already. And there is actually some shame in Japanese culture attached to Boro because it was born out of poverty. So yeah, I just like to tread really carefully when I'm messing about with other people's cultures, and I come from a place of respect and admiration and appreciation of the beauty of it. Although even saying that I appreciate the beauty of it, I recognise in some quarters there it's not seen as beautiful because of, you know, it's like my granny wouldn't have liked a darned stocking because it meant she was poor and couldn't afford new stockings. Whereas now the visible mending movement, you know, we love a darned stocking, some of us, or, you know, a sock that's darned with a contrasting colour or whatever. We're now coming from a place of comparable wealth, some of us, on the planet, and, you know, doing this for our own, for craft purposes, for a pastime, for a hobby, is not the same as people doing it through need. So anyway, back to what we're doing. So this is a piece of cloth that I am collaging, and I am taking as my inspiration the Japanese culture of Boro. I am not making Boro. I'm not going to keep saying it, but I do feel quite strongly about it. I don't know why. I just do. I just feel. I think it's because I love it so much and I want to treat it with respect and I want to honour it and not disrespect it. Anyway, so I've got these little gaps and I've got these little scraps of cloth. So what you can do is you can just get a bit and put it over like that, or you can, you know, feed it in underneath if you think that looks nicer. And this process of feeding it underneath rather than layering it up in a logical way, it like I said, it does make a difference to the finished look. And it does now feel more like I've got a textile here that's been worn, that needs patching, and I'm having to work with what's there rather than constructing it from the ground up. I hope that makes sense. That is why I encourage you to have a go at working in this fashion. Although it might not make sense, you know, it's not the easiest way of doing it, it's maybe the most rewarding way of doing it. I'm going to turn that the other way up because I like that fluffy edge better. And you have to think and you have to problem solve and you have to work with what you've got. You know, I'm working with what's there, and I've restricted myself to this one little basket with some scraps in, and I've put all the other cloth over there out of the way. So I think I would like that little bit of red there. So I'm going to cut that off there and put another pin in it. I'll just put a pin through there. And then I've got this teeny tiny gap here. I've got this teeny tiny bit of blue. could feed in under there. Now I'm not going to feed that whole piece in, I'm going to cut a bit off because I think it's too big. And I don't want to waste it because that is a very nice piece of indigo and I've not got much of it left. So that's kind of, you know, thinking about, I don't want to hide some of it underneath there because I might be able to use that little piece somewhere else. So I'm just giving a little bit of more value to that little scrap of cloth. There we go. See, because I've tucked that under, I hope you can see what I mean. It gives a whole, it's a different look to if I'd built those layers one on top of the other. And it's the process as well. I always talk about the process. You know, this process is different to normal cloth collage. That piece of bright red keeps jumping out at me and I do love it. I'm just going to needle it. It's only a tiny bit, it's probably okay, but it feels quite high thread count. Yeah, I mean that's quite a big needle, but it is quite high thread count. But it's such a beautiful shade of red. Just going to get a tiny bit of it. Just put that on there like that, I think. I might just put it under that edge. Yes, 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 yes. And again, I'm not too worried about the overlaps, you know, it's not like when I talked before about doing cloth collage, make sure you overlap by ½ an inch, otherwise it'll separate when you stitch. And just, it's not that I'm not overlapping on purpose, but that was a bit small. You see there, that overlap is barely. I didn't do that on purpose, but I'm not worrying about it because if it comes apart when I stitch, I'll just stitch something else over. And I might even do the stitching in phases, and I'll talk more about that next week probably. I think this week, if you get your first pass basted on, then you know that's a lot of homework. Put that little piece in there. Sorry, I have to concentrate when I'm doing this so then I don't talk anymore. But I hope you're getting the idea. I'm just going to trim that off square there. And it's not ironed because it's me, but also I must say that if I'm doing this, it would be less problematic if it was ironed, but it's softer because it's not all crisp. I mean, I certainly wouldn't starch it. That's me. If you want to starch your cloth, you starch your cloth. I'm not going to come to your house and tell you off. Oh, that's a poem. But I like it rumply. It's not only laziness. So I've got one more little bit here. What can I put in there? I've got this little scrap of my daddy's shirt, which is silk. I might be able to just fit into there. I might put it under both so it's just peeping out. And maybe even under that red as well. There we go, like so. So that is, let's call that my second pass. So I would then go back in and baste all that down. And I might even then do a third pass later. I might decide that, let me just put pins in that while I remember where it is. I might decide later that there's some big areas with not much going on. So like up here for example. So then I might go in here and get a little bit of that vintage kimono cotton and You see it's got this one side that's blue with a sort of creamy pattern on it, and then it's got the other side that's black with a blue pattern on it. So I like to get these long strips and put them so they cross two patches. So I might do that, something like that. So I might then get that there. I don't know why I'm saying I might, apparently I am. I'm putting that there. I'm putting some pins in that. So this would sort of be my third pass. So I go over it, just to recap, so I go over it choosing scraps that played nicely together, but not worrying about covering up the whole of the back cloth. And when I'd done that, maybe section by section I would baste it, but being careful not to baste right up to the edges where there were gaps. And then I would go with a second pass and fill in the gaps, either tucking things behind or putting things over or whatever. And then I might and baste all that down, and then I might go over again and just have a look at it and think, have I got large areas that need breaking up, or have I got pieces that need sort of unifying in some way, or have I got a lot of pieces going horizontally, a lot of kind of landscape pieces, in which case I might want to go and find some small pieces that are you know, strips like this, and then start laying a couple that way. Do you see that? Straight away changes the look of it, because here these two pieces are similar sizes, and then if you put something else like that, and you don't have to put it right over, you can play with, you know, do you want it just a little bit onto there and more onto there? I think I'd want it a bit thinner. And so I like to offset things rather than putting them central. So just and then you can just have a look at the shapes that it makes. See, central is quite static, whereas if you put it just a little bit to one side and maybe a little bit down, it straight away is more interesting. I quite like it there. And again, try and find your thinnest cloths. If you haven't got thin old cloths, try your thrift stores and your charity shops. Your thrift stores, your charity shops, your, you know, car boot sales, whatever. Your own wardrobes. The wardrobes of your family and friends, get their permission. The rag bag, you know, if you've got a rag bag in your house, look in that. Cloth is literally everywhere. And you can just be a bit inventive. Right, so that, for starters, is that. It doesn't look like I've done a lot. Some of you might think it looks like a bit of a hot mess. I think it looks promising. So what I'm going to do this week is go ahead and cover my whole section in this manner and have it all basted. And then next week I'll start the stitching and talk more about Japanese Boro and the history of it and so on. So I hope you like this month. I hope it was clear enough in the beginning when I explained about how I'm going to make this piece fit onto the coverlet. If you've got any questions at all, please feel free to put them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them next week. So meanwhile, thank you so much for watching. I'll get this in for you to look at again. This is kind of what I'm aiming for. This is a look I'm aiming for. Yeah. So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Love and kisses. Bye bye.